one of our first webinars that are drawing on the African collaboration between the University of the Free State, University of Zambia, and University. And our presenter now is from University of Zambia. But before I present or introduce our presenter, just a few things to note during the presentations. Please, those online, do keep your mics off until it's question and answer time. And what's going to happen is that Dr. Mwelwa, who I'll introduce shortly, will present for between 35 minutes and 40 minutes, after which we've got, we'll have a question and answer. So I will introduce our speaker now, who is Dr. Kapambwe from University of Zambia. And he's a lecturer in the Department of Educational Administration and Policy Studies in the Faculty of Education. He's got a PhD from UNISA and a Master's in Education Management from UNZA, which is the University of Zambia. He is the head of the Department of Educational Administration and Policy Studies. And you also coordinate the Master's Program in Educational Management at the Institute of Distance Education at the University of Zambia. And he has more than 10 years of research experience in secondary and higher education in Zambia. His practical research interests include access, equity, and quality issues in education, higher education and graduate employability, work integrated learning, educational leadership and management. We are also interested in legal issues in education in the Zambian context. So what Dr. Mwelwa is going to be talking to us about today is harmonizing higher education curricula with the job market requirements for enhanced graduate employability in Zambia. And he's looking at, he's taking a critical analysis to the job advertisements in the country. So your 35 to 40 minutes will start now. Please go ahead.
Thank you so much, action and the opportunity to share the research that we are doing with all who are present. And so this afternoon, the title of this particular study, like has been mentioned, is Harmonizing Higher Education Curricula with job market requirements for enhanced graduate employability in Zambia, a critical analysis of job advertisements. This will be the outline of this particular presentation. The background to this particular study is that our country, Zambia, aspires to become a middle-income country by the year 2030. And this is enshrined in the Vision 2030 for the country, and also a number of different national development plans that we have been implementing as a country. And currently, the country is implementing the 8th National Development Plan, which also speaks to education and skills development. So this is because education has been recognized to be an important factor that can enhance development and productivity in the nation. And in this regard, our higher learning institutions have been given this responsibility to ensure that they produce graduates who are employable and who have skills that are in line with what the labor industry demands. And so producing these graduates is critical, as it can help our country to reduce the high unemployment levels, reduce inequalities, and also help reduce poverty, which will ultimately lead to human development in the country. So this particular study was undertaken in the sense that the relevance of higher education in the country has been questioned by many stakeholders. And this has been occasioned by the fact that there are a lot of graduates in the country who are not finding employment opportunities despite accessing this education that we are talking about. And the government has not been idle. It has tried to put in place a number of strategies and policies to try and remediate this particular issue. But the fact is that the quality of education continues to be questioned because most of the graduates continue remaining unemployed. And when we look at the current statistics, we see that over 12.5% of those who are eligible for employment in the country have been reported to be unemployed. And when you look at our country, Zambia, it has a population of 18 million people. And those who are in the labor sector are roughly about 3,000 or 3 million people. And the majority of these people are in the informal sector. And so when we read many reports about what is obtaining in Zambia, higher learning institutions have been labeled to be producing graduates who are not work ready, and as such, there has been a reported mismatch between the skills that are coming out of the higher learning institutions and what the labor industry needs. And this particular skill mismatch, as we may want to understand, may pertain to some people being overeducated compared to the available jobs on the market, or people having the wrong skills compared to the skills that are on demand on the labor market. And so, in this particular regard, everyone who goes to these higher learning institutions wants to secure a job. And the only way they can secure a job is if they have been given an opportunity to access the right skills and competencies that are demanded by the labor market. And so in this particular regard, higher learning institutions are considered to be producing graduates who do not have skills that match the labor industry due to a lack of a proper mix of the acquired and the required skills for graduates to be employable. And despite all these different factors that have been put in place, and also considering the programs that people have undertaken, for instance, the programs on demand, on the market, and also considering the economy of our country, are we able to create more jobs? Is the labor industry doing very well? People continue questioning higher education despite there being other factors that may be at play as to why people are not able to get jobs. So the labor industry is often thought of as putting the blame on the higher education sector, that the higher education sector is not producing graduates who are employable, who are needed by the labor industry. And so in this regard, we can safely say that the aspect of producing graduates who are employable remains at the core of higher education outcomes, not only in Zambia, but elsewhere as well. So it is against this background that we sought to critically analyze the job advertisements to establish how best they can influence higher education programs that may be available with regards to the skills and competencies that are demanded by the labor market in order to ensure that we produce graduates who are work ready. A number of studies have been done that have considered the views of the employers, and others have considered the views of the higher education institutions as well as the graduates themselves. But we decided to do something different in Zambia, trying to look at some of these jobs that are currently available and trying to see how are the current jobs matching with the programs that are available in our higher learning institutions, and see how best what these jobs that are advertised are seeking can best be produced through the higher learning institutions. And so that is the aim of the study. We had the 3 research questions that we set up to answer. The first one is, what were the common priority skills and competencies and other qualification requirements in job advertisements demanded by most employers in Zambia's labor industry sectors? And this was between January and November 2024. The other question was to find out, how do the selected higher education program curriculum objectives, the content, and the pedagogy reflect graduates' development as well as acquisition of knowledge, skills, and competences, as well as attributes that may be needed by the labor industry. And finally, we want to see what lessons can we draw from the information that we have gathered or gleaned from these job advertisements in terms of how it can inform how our education programs are actually designed in order to ensure that the graduates from these particular programs are actually employable. And so this particular study is very important for 2 main reasons. In the sense that when we analyze the contents of the job advertisements, the information that we get from there can help enhance the curriculum content as well as delivered methods so that higher learning institutions can equip our graduates with the knowledge and the skills that is actually needed for them to be employable. The second aspect is that in this particular study, we are looking at the labor market requirements and how these can enhance graduate employability from an integrated conceptual framework. And this integrated conceptual framework combines the capability approach as well as the sustainable career framework. Now, these two frameworks that are integrated are very important because, as you shall see, then it will mean that this particular study has made a significant theoretical contribution to the employability discourse using these few lenses. And so, the first theory is the human capability approach, which most of us appreciate, which emphasizes that individuals must be afforded freedoms and opportunities so that they can pursue the life that they value or do whatever it is that they need, and in the respect of this particular study, so that they can be employable. In other words, they need the employability capability so that they are able to secure the jobs. And the human capability approach, as you may be aware, we are talking about individual agents and freedom. We are talking about functionings and capabilities. And at the same time, we are also talking about conversion factors that may make it difficult for a graduate to either secure a job or not to secure a job, depending on the personal, social, and environmental characteristics that may be influencing them. When we come to the sustainable career framework, this is a recent framework, this particular framework is there basically just to put together or to integrate the individual, organizational, as well as social dimensions of career development to promote sustainable, resilient, as well as fulfilling careers. So basically, the sustainable career framework, which we are talking about, speaks to our graduates, for instance, entering into a lifelong career that is sustainable, and it hinges on the fact that these graduates have to be adaptable and they have to continue learning for a longer period of time, as long as the labor market that they want to get in is dynamic and there are a lot of changes. They need to be updating their skills for the rest of their life as they enter into this career trajectory. And it also focuses on the various factors that may also affect an individual to be successful as they are trying to secure employment. And so I've already made reference to the aspect of flexibility that a graduate should always ensure that they adapt to the changing labor market demands and ensure that their personal circumstances are in such a manner that they are favored, so to say, or they have the capacity to be able to get the job and they have to continue learning. And it has also got 4 important dimensions which have to do with time, meaning that this career trajectory or the job that someone wants to get in is for a long period of time. And when we talk about aspects of sustainability, we are saying that a graduate must ensure that they use their time wisely now to acquire all the necessary skills and competence that they need so that they do not compromise the opportunities or that may be available for them in future so that they can remain employable in their career trajectory. There's also the aspect of the social space. And here we are talking about the broad context, just like the capability approach, to say different aspects of employability can happen within a family, within the workspace. And in this regard, as you shall see later on, we are talking about how employability skills can also be developed away from the higher learning institutions, but within the working space as well, through affording these graduates internships and other avenues for them to acquire skills. It also promotes the issue of agency, that the graduates themselves must be in the driving seat, taking charge of their own career trajectory, ensuring that they have what it takes for them to be able to access the available opportunities when they exit the universities or any learning institution where they are. The other last aspect has to do with meaning. And here we are talking about, for instance, if we are talking about employability, what does this mean to a graduate? Yeah, what is meaningful or what is valuable to a graduate is having these employability skills. If you want to secure a career, then it means that in terms of sustainability, whatever you are going through will make sense to you as a graduate if you have what it takes to be employable. And so this is the visual representation of this particular integrative framework, where we have the human capability approach. It is very important in this regard because it touches on the issues of conversion factors, which when not considered may lead to inequalities and having some people accessing employment opportunities while others not, as we shall see when we look at the results of this particular study. On the other aspect, we have the sustainable career framework, which has the aspect of flexibility learning, like I have already alluded to. And then when you check downside there, we find that DeVos and others have come up with a concept of sustainable competence capital. Now, this concept of sustainable competence capital implies that a graduate must be in possession of the technical, generic or transferable, as well as career skills in order for them to be employable or to have what is called the employability capability. And what this simply implies is that they must be able to acquire skills. Wherever they can acquire these skills and competences that are needed, they should have the capacity to transfer skills from one context of employment to another. They should be able to upskill themselves so that they can continue in this career for a longer period of time. And when we combine all these concepts together, what we have at the center there is sustainable graduate employability, implying that as we try to develop our graduates, we must develop our graduates for a longer period of time, that the careers that they are going to pursue after university will be for a lifetime. And within the different phases of their career, they will need different employability skills. So while it is important that they have what it takes in order for them to be employable at the beginning, they need also to continue as they get the job navigating the employment environment and ensuring that they are successful. And so the methodology that was applied in this particular study is that we adopted the mixed methods approach, where we use both quantitative and qualitative data, and this was a sequential exploratory design. And basically what we have done, the key things we have done in this particular study is that we have looked at job advertisements and also looked at the program documents that were available in the universities. And so we looked at 100 different job advertisements for the period of 12 months. And within the period of 12 months, and we thoroughly also examined through document analysis, 30 higher education programs that we looked at, which could be a diploma or a degree. And we collected this information from online portals. For instance, in Zambia, we have what is called the gozambiajobs.com and many other online platforms, as well as daily tabloids where these jobs were advertised. And using content analysis, we analyzed these particular documents, including other policy documents that speak to higher education in the country. And from this, we came up with a skills mapping, descriptive statistics, as we analyzed the patterns and the trends in the jobs that were advertised. In terms of the validity and reliability, we ensured that we had a clear questionnaire that was informed by the research that the literature that we reviewed, and we also looked at the program documents from the Higher Education Authority, as well as the Zambia Qualification Authority, ZAQUA. And this also helped us to ensure that the results that we came up with were valid and also reliable, as the team composed of expertise and people who have experience in research, and we took into consideration the ethical issues. So what are some of the results that we got from this particular study? When we get to research question 1, that is looking at the priority skills as well as the competences and the other qualification requirements that were in the job adverts, demanded most by the employers in Zambia. This is what we established. In terms of the jobs that were advertised by the sector, we established that there were more jobs within the education sector, And this was followed by jobs within the technology and digital services sector, which is about ICT and technology. And we also found that there were also a lot of jobs advertised in the public service and administration sector, that is the government jobs, and also in the manufacturing and industrial sector. And this manufacturing and industrial sector also encapsulates the mining sector as well. And there are also these other sectors, but I'll simply highlight those four where there were more jobs that were advertised. In addition to the education levels that were demanded for the jobs that we analyzed, we found that the majority of the jobs that were advertised required that a graduate should be in possession of a bachelor's degree. And by the way, you can see that we looked at job adverts that also required a diploma or a certificate, because these qualifications are still being considered in Zambia. But basically, as things stand, the official qualification to get, especially a public job in Zambia, is a diploma and not a degree. So the majority of the jobs that were available required that a graduate should possess a university degree, that is the first degree. So most of the skills that were demanded by the labor market were communication skills, and these skills, sometimes it is very difficult to draw a boundary between them. People will tell you that there are technical skills that are job specific, and those are very clear and important. And in addition to that, there are also transferable skills or soft skills that you can transfer across the jobs, and these are considered to be very important in the employability agenda of any graduate. So we established, when we looked at all the job adverts, that almost all the job adverts had communication skills. And these communication skills included things like ability, being able to negotiate, being able to communicate fluently in one's language, for instance, English, which is used as the official language in Zambia, having writing skills. And we are also talking about being able to speak fluently, as it were, being able to negotiate, and that these communication skills are very important for one to succeed in the job. And this was followed by technical and analytical skills. This time around, with the advent of technology, we cannot run away that where we are going, and I think in the short period of time, these technical skills may even overtake communication skills, because they have become part and parcel of any job that someone can do. Should be able to know how to use the computer and other software as it were. And that is about the technical and analytical skills, which are job specific. So the other one, the third one, was the digital and computer literacy, which I have already alluded to. And the others were management and leadership, as well as administrative and organizational skills. So what we are able to see from here is that a graduate does not just need to possess technical skills that are job specific, but rather transferable skills, which we have highlighted to, such as communication skills, digital and computer literacy skills, professionalism and ethics, creativity and innovation. All these skills are needed and demanded in most of the jobs so that a graduate can be employable. So basically, the question which we want to answer later on is to say, how can institutions of higher learning actually help graduates to develop and embrace these skills that we are talking about so that they are employable? Probably the other question that we may ask as well is that, is it only the responsibility of higher learning institutions alone to help graduates develop these skills that we are talking about? I think we'll get back to those questions later on as we continue with the conversation. What we are able to see here, we are trying to do a cross-tabulation between the skills that are demanded against the labor industry. What was coming out prominently from this is that communication skills were demanded from all the different job sectors that we are talking about, be it education, be it in the banking sector, and this was followed by technical skills. And after that, we have management skills and administrative skills. And when you closely analyze what is coming out of here, you'll be able to see that depending on what this particular sector focuses on, they emphasize certain skills at the expense of another. And that is also very critical, considering that when you look at this information, higher learning institutions, depending on the programs that they are offering, they should be able to tell which kind of skills are usually are mostly demanded in this particular sector, and ensure that they work towards preparing their graduates, embracing those particular skills. And I think that is very critical. In addition to those skills that we have talked about that graduates are supposed to possess in order for them to be employable, the job advertisements that we analyzed also add other attributes which graduates must possess in addition to the skills that they have. But one thing we also observed is that it was more or less like a repetition in some of the adverts. We find that the skills that are demanded have been outlined, but in addition to that, they also say they are looking for a graduate, or they are looking for an applicant who has got these attributes. When you look at some of the attributes, they also speak to some of the skills which we have already talked about, probably implying how critical they consider those skills to be part and parcel of the package for somebody to be employable. So some of the attributes which we are coming out is that somebody should be detailed, oriented, and accurate in terms of whatever it is that they deal with. Teamwork and collaboration, this also came out as a very important skill, that the graduates that we are producing must have teamwork and collaborative skills, because when they join the industry, they will not be working alone, they'll be working with other people. So how do we ensure that we produce graduates who have got these attributes? Or are we saying it is up to the graduates themselves to be able to build these particular skills or skill in themselves? Then there's also the aspect of self-management. And this, as you shall see later, spoke very well to the career competence, whereby you understand yourself as an individual, understand what your weaknesses are and what your strengths are, and how best you can present yourself when it comes to securing employment opportunities out there. There are also others, as you can see there, but I will simply focus on these which were very critical, which are the key attributes that are needed in addition to the other skills that graduates should possess in order for them to be employable. The aspect of work experience also came out strongly in this particular study. And as you can see there, most of the job adverts that we analyzed, they were requiring a graduate to have 2+ years of experience in order for them to get a job. The question is, do our higher learning institutions provide graduates to have these 2+ or 2 to 3 years experience in order for them to be able to get the job? Probably your answer is no, we do not do that. So where do the graduates get the 2 to 3 years experience to get the job? And so from here, what we see is that majority of the jobs required 2 to 3 years experience, and also 4 to 5 years for most of the senior positions that were advertised. So these are not graduate entry jobs because they are at senior level, and so a graduate may not get that particular job. But entry level positions, as we observed, especially for the diploma programs, required 0 to 1 years in order for a graduate to be considered for employability. There were also some jobs, especially I saw in the education sector, where they were advertising for someone to be employed, for instance, as maybe a dean of a faculty or vice chancellor or deputy vice chancellor. And these required those who had a lot of experience in order for them to be able to get a job. So from here, we can already establish that the issue of experience is a barrier to accessing employability opportunities for most of our graduates. And that begs the question, what should higher learning institutions do in order to ensure that graduates possesses the requisite experience that is demanded by the labor industry? And so we see that there were also other jobs that did not demand for specific work experience. There were a few jobs that were requiring employing graduates for internship. So we are talking about internships that are initiated by the labor industries themselves. The corporations themselves say, we want these graduates to be part of the work that we are doing. But those were not many, implying that the labor industry is not doing enough to come to the aid of the higher learning institutions so that we can produce graduates who have the requisite experience that is demanded. And this is what came out in the sectors in terms of the work experience that was demanded. So as you can see, we find that those jobs that demanded 2 to 3 years were the majority in order for the graduates to be employable. And this implies that the issue of experience is very cardinal. In terms of the job types that we established that most of the jobs were on full-time, and the implication was that graduates were to get in a long career trajectory for a longer period of time, and therefore universities or higher learning institutions will have to prepare them for such kind of jobs. Internship jobs, as I have already alluded, were very few such jobs that were available for our graduates. The location of the jobs that were advertised was also an interesting one. Most of the jobs were concentrated in Lusaka, which is the capital of Zambia. And what this basically implies is that it means that in the other 10 provinces of Zambia, the employment opportunities are very low. And what that simply implies is that graduates will have to migrate then to Lusaka where opportunities are, so that they can get the jobs. Now, what about those who do not have the capacity and the resources that can enable them to get to Lusaka to get the jobs? And so herein lies also some inequalities associated with the geographical distribution of these jobs that we have. These employment opportunities are not available evenly in all the different provinces of Zambia, and this presents a challenge in contributing to the high unemployment levels of the graduates. So in terms of the other common job requirements across the industry that we came across, that there were computer literacy skills were needed, and this is coming from additional information of what else was needed for somebody to be employable. There was professional certification. We have talked about the 2 years work experience, having a bachelor's degree, professional membership, and so on and so forth. What came out from this is that the issue of professional membership by our graduates in that particular field where they are pursuing a program is also very important. So how do we ensure that graduates, for instance, as they embark on pursuing a degree in business administration or marketing, they are linked to professional organization? For instance, in Zambia, we have Zambia Institute of Purchasing and Supply, we have Zambia Institute of Marketing, we have Zambia Institute of Chartered Accountants, and so on and so forth. How do we ensure that these professional organizations become part of what higher learning institutions are doing, so that at the end of the day, whatever is it that they do professionally is inculcated in these graduates, so that as they leave the universities or other higher learning institutions, they already understand what goes on in these professional sectors that they have selected. The second research question that we had was talking about how do the available programs align with some of those things we have seen in the job adverts that we have analyzed in terms of the content of the programs, in terms of the pedagogy, that's the methods that are used for teaching, as well as assessment in Zambia, so that we can produce graduates who have what it takes for them to be employable. Basically, what we did here when we are looking at the third program documents through analysis of documents that speak to how program documents are designed in Zambia and literature, we came up with this as the analysis framework. And this was premised on the 5-point Likert scale, so that we can thoroughly and comprehensively analyze those program documents if they are speaking to issues of what the Zambia qualification framework descriptors tell us of what kind of skills a graduate at level 7 should possess and at level 6, and also looking at how they are integrating issues of the labor industry, as it were. And in this regard, we were able to analyze these programs. And some of the findings, I'm going to present them diagrammatically, but the summary is that most of the program conformed to the SARChI National Qualification Framework and the standards of the Higher Education Authority in terms of the competences and the other skills that were needed, but they did not adequately foster the education industry linkages. There was still something missing there. And most of the programs weakly integrated industry-based assessments and disadvantage the students somehow to bridge the gap between theory and practice. And some programs lacked industrial attachment as well as internship, which are some of the areas that can be improved upon. And these are presented in these visual displays based on a 5-point Likert scale. As you can see, most of these appear to be doing well, but balancing theory and practice, you can see that not all the different programs that we have there are doing well. And the evidence of industry engagement was there, sometimes at program level or review. But when it comes to teaching and assessment, you find that not all programs were engaging the labor industry. Now, as I conclude, just speaking to the last question, which is talking about the implications of these particular findings and how they can be part of forming the graduate employability conversation in enhancing the programs. What this particular study has established is that for graduates to be employable, they need to be empowered with communication skills, technical and analytical skills, management and leadership skills, that these are critical. And in addition to that, pedagogical approaches that are used, as you shall see briefly, should help graduates acquire these skills. And this will entail things like job shadowing, ensuring that we use school-based enterprises, internships and work placements, that these are very critical for promoting these skills in our graduates. In the context of the conceptual framework, integrated conceptual framework that we came up with, what we are saying is that the capability approach can help us to promote these capabilities for employability when we afford graduates with learning opportunities as well as experiences to gain the transferable skills that we are talking about to make them employable. We are also saying, in the context of the sustainable career framework, we are saying that we need to encourage graduates to network with professionals in their field or industry associations, participate in these networking events that will help them to build social capital, and that will prepare them to access job opportunities for a long career that they are likely to have. Now, in this regard, we are saying, as a way of recommending what should be done. In terms of pedagogy, we need to promote active learning. I will not go into details. I've already been signaled of time. We need to promote active learning, and this will help our graduates acquire teamwork, communication, and problem-solving skills. Experiential learning is very important. Our program should not be purely academic. We need to provide hands-on experience through internships, industrial attachments, and this will help our graduates to get the practical skills that they need. Collaborative learning is very important to foster teamwork, skills that are needed by the labor industry. Problem-based learning is important. Our assignment should be focusing on resolving real-world problems, developing research work, and all these other things that will help our graduates to promote critical thinking as it were. And in terms of assessment, it is the same thing. We need to ensure that our assessment methods are very comprehensive, so that at the end of the day, we give our students feedback that will help them to acquire these skills, as it were. The assessment should be authentic. It should reflect the skills that they have acquired, these students of ours, or the weaknesses that they have, so that they can be improved upon. And we can allow them to also ensure that they also assess themselves, so that amongst themselves, they can see whether they are doing enough or not. Competence-based assessments are also critical in order to ensure that our students acquire these skills that we are talking about. And we also need to have what are called career support services in our institutions, talking about what it is as the student transitions from the higher learning institution to the world of work outside there. In most of the universities in Zambia, we found that this was lacking. So how do we conclude? In conclusion, we are saying that graduate employability is a complex issue. It cannot be sorted out by universities alone. It requires a collaborative approach between policymakers, the higher learning institutions themselves, as well as the universities. In addition to the graduates themselves who should have the agents, the agentification is very critical for them to be able to navigate the labor industry that we are talking about. And so when we work together and support the higher learning institutions, then they'll be able to produce graduates who are employable. And this also implies that the academics or teachers in these higher learning institutions, should also be alive to this development so that as they teach and assess our learners, whatever they do is in line with empowering our learners so that they acquire these employability skills. Probably, or maybe in some way, we may reduce on the unemployment levels that we have in our countries. So this is the Zambian context in terms of graduate employability. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mwelwa. I think now we've got 19 minutes, which I think are sufficient for us to engage in a discussion. I will start by taking questions in the room, and then if anyone online has a question, please raise your hand or just type it in the chat. I'll take one question at a time, please. Yes, Mika.
Okay, well, just as well, because I have a few, I think. Thank you so much for your presentation, Dr. Mwelwa. I wondered if you have speculated on the discrepancy between teamwork and collaboration ranking sort of low to middle as a skill versus it ranking quite high on the attribute list. I know that you said in some cases it was repeated across both, which would mean that they're kind of reinforcing that it's an important skill and attribute. But what do you make of the situation where a skill might rank really high as a skill, but low as an attribute? High and low, so the opposite. And then in terms of the duration of employment, I was wondering if the full-time employment refers to permanent employment, because that's not the way that I would read it. I don't think it always means that, because people could be employed full-time, but on a short-term contract. And I'm asking because in some of the research I've done with graduates of rural origin, they were talking about contracts that were as short as 3 months, 6 months, whatever, but full-time during that. So I wondered if you were distinguishing between full-time and permanent employment versus the duration of the contracts. Yeah. What is your take on unpaid internships? So some people say, well, look, if you don't have a job and you need experience, take whatever you can get. But some people talk about this being quite an exploitative practice on the part of employers, because they know that they're graduates who are desperate for work. But then it ends up sort of reinforcing those who are already in positions of privilege, who might be able to afford to work for free, as it were. What's your take on that? And then in terms of authentic assessments, I wondered if the use of artificial intelligence for things like assignments and things like that is on the rise in Zambia as it is in South Africa and other parts of the world. Thank you.
Those questions can lead us to the end of the discussion.
I'm trying to be brief. I think the first one, thank you so much, Prof. Mika, for those questions and observations. You talked about the skill of collaboration and teamwork. Ranking low as a skill and the I as an attribute here. So basically what was happening when you look at the way these job adverts are structured, there's no uniform structure in terms of what the employer is looking for. So every employer will sit down and say, okay, this is what we are looking for in terms of the candidate that we are going to pick for that particular job. So when you look at those jobs that we selected, you find that among the qualifications there, you find that for the skills, there is also something to do with collaboration, the teamwork, ability to work with others without challenges. But you also find that we also established that in some other jobs, they were also talking about additional requirements. Not all the jobs were having additional requirements, but you find that there are some jobs where they are talking about additional requirements. And in that particular job, you find that one must be able to work with a team, should have collaborative skills. And so when we looked at that additional requirement information, we thought it would also be important to bring out this information, because it is also part and parcel of what is required for somebody to be given a particular job in that particular industry. So as we tried to analyze that information, it came out that issues of collaboration and also teamwork ranked highly in terms of the attributes that were needed. But it was also, this teamwork is also among the skills that have also been identified in terms of the skills and competencies that a graduate should be able to possess. And I think this is blurred by the fact that sometimes it is very difficult to draw a distinction between these different skills. Some of them actually, you cannot separate them. As you are trying to develop one skill, probably another skill is being developed. So I think it emanated from that. In terms of the jobs, whether being short-term jobs or full-term jobs, most of those jobs that we established, I think we are so much concerned about full-time jobs. But there were also just a few jobs that were on a contract basis, and there was a category for a contract job. But those were very few. So those we labeled as the full-time jobs. Those were spanning for a longer period of time. Because in Zambia, when you work for 3 months, that is like being on probation, pending confirmation in service, 3 months to 6 months. And so the labor laws that we have actually are prohibitive of employing people for a short period of time, then you fire them. If you can keep them for a long time, then you have to give them a full-time job. When it comes to the unpaid internships, and these unpaid internships, they are available in Zambia. I saw that in the health sector when we had the the outbreak of cholera. Many volunteered to be able to provide a service in the Ministry of Health, and others, because of the volunteering spirit, ended up being employed. They have full-time jobs by now. So if somebody is trying to build their employability capability, I think volunteering and being able to take up unpaid internships could be an avenue that can favor somebody to be able to get the job. But you cannot volunteer for unpaid job if you have to cover 50 k's or kilometers to go and do the job. You don't even know where your next meal will come from. So it becomes very difficult. And most of these graduates we are talking about are coming from different rural areas. And so unpaid internship becomes a challenge. But most of our corporations also, like it was indicated in the study, are not just willing to take up most of our graduates. Probably there may be a policy or a piece of legislation that may be required that it should be mandatory as a corporation. There should be jobs that should be made available for the graduates to get the experience that is demanded when these jobs are advertised.
Amazing. That's a very comprehensive response. I'll go to the question online while I wait for someone else. Chris, you follow. But there's a question online from Victor, and he says, how much do economic factors or the economic context matter in the employability or unemployability of HE graduates? And this is against his observation that students acquire all the skills you have highlighted, but then sometimes they find that a country is poor or the economy of that country is not doing well.
I think in the preamble, I stressed that the subject of employability has a dual perspective to it. It cannot be left to the higher learning institutions alone. Probably a graduate may acquire all these employability capabilities that we are talking about, but if the country is economically constrained and the economy is not growing, to make it available for the corporations to create employment opportunities, then those jobs are not just going to be there. And that has been observed so and acknowledged that the economy also has a role to play when it comes to promoting graduate employability. Because of that, you find that opportunities actually tend to diminish when you don't have more jobs that are being created. But however, despite that being the case, people still point fingers at higher learning institutions, that they should be able to promote the graduates who are employable. And actually, the concept of employability does not necessarily imply being in employment. It simply means having what it takes to secure a job, succeed on that job, remain on that job, or if possible, leave that job and secure another one. When we talk about employment, we're just talking about the statistics of those people who have the jobs. So I think we should be more concerned about the employability concept because employability can actually also be extended, not basically just looking for an employment opportunity, but also creating your own employment opportunities because you have all that it takes in order for you to be able to survive. I think Chris yesterday made a presentation on social entrepreneurship, which is also another important avenue. Somebody may end up becoming an entrepreneur despite having acquired all these technical skills and the like, as long as the conditions are favorable in order for them to thrive as they try to run their own business.
Great. Chris, you've got a follow-on comment, yes. And then I'll take one question at a time, right? So Chris, then Solo, and then Fenela.
Okay. Thanks very much, Doc, for this interesting presentation that was talking a lot about my study as well. I really enjoyed the presentation. So my question is just understand, what is the structure of the Zambian education framework? Will they have like you come first 2 years, or then you go for industrial attachment, then you come and finish your degree, or it's just a continuous, you finish and then you start looking for other internship like what South Africa does in most of their degrees?
Yeah, so in terms of the way the higher education system is structured, is in such a way that a degree program will basically run for 4 years. If it is a diploma program, it will run for 3 years. But it also depends on how the program is actually structured. You discover when we're analyzing these program documents that some of the programs, we will have a course that has to do with industrial attachment. And other courses will have what is called internship. And so there's no uniformity in terms of how these attachments or this experiential learning component is actually structured in these programs. It depends on what the university or that higher learning institution wants. But as long as it is within the Zambia qualification framework, when it speaks to that, then there is no problem. So what we basically say is that for industrial attachment, a student will go out maybe for 6 weeks. Others, maybe towards the end of their program, 3 months, they will be attached to the labor industry. But you find that most of those are not very common. In some programs, they are basically lacking. Somebody will have just to do the research. But of late, there has been a conversation to say we need to strike a balance between theoretical knowledge and also practical work, because once the students are exposed to the industry, then they will build social capital there. Probably someone will say, we are impressed in what you are capable of doing. When there's an opening, you apply and we'll consider you. And so basically, those industrial attachments are there, but there isn't anything like maybe going for industrial attachment for 1 year, like in Nigeria, I shared with her, where she was saying, when you finish your degree for 1 year, you go for some form of attachment in Nigeria. We don't have that in Zambia. In the past, there used to be what was called national service, where when you complete grade 12, you go for some form of military training and other skills, but we no longer have that now.
So look, can I go to a question online in case the people online want to leave at 1 o'clock? Right. So there's a follow-on question related to social capital from Tiffany.
Yes. And
her question is, how does one's social capital play when it comes to employability?
That is a very good question. It is very possible that people can say there will be a graduation ceremony tomorrow. You have completed your program. Others tomorrow will be coming, they have already landed a job. Others don't even know how they will be able to get that particular job. So social capital, I think, is at play everywhere. If someone has links to someone in a sector where they have openings and they know that you have the capacity to do the work, such an individual is likely to get a job compared to someone who literally knows nobody. All they have is the degree and themselves. Those ones may have challenges. But others have the opportunities through mass recruitments by the government. But those do not often happen in all the different sectors. It is only in the education sector, in the health sector, even in defense, where we have mass recruitments, where somebody can easily get a job even without social capital. But by and large, social capital has a huge role to play in terms of influencing how somebody to get to have opportunities in order for them to secure employment.
Right. So we have 4 minutes left, but it's important to give the people that raise their hands first the chance. So if anyone online would like to leave at 1 o'clock, please do feel free to leave at 1. But I will give Tolu and Fenela the opportunity to ask their questions and let you respond.
Okay, thanks, Dr. Philip. Doctor, thanks very much. I was also more inspired by how you actually went about your presentation. My question, I've got one question and a comment. I just wanted to know what is the current state of entrepreneurship in Zambia? Because I think entrepreneurship can actually be used as a tool to, promote self-employability and ultimately reduce, challenges of, graduates being unemployed. And the other one, I think, is the comment. Maybe you decide if maybe you can remark on it or what. Why are universities not phasing out, programs that are not responding to the labor market? And without something like undermining some programs like HR management and communication that you also highlighted, although it's very essential in terms of, employment in the Zambian context. How about these programs, like HR management, they are being incorporated and integrated into, the most essential skills, that are actually required, mainly required by the labor market. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your questions. I really appreciate. So the aspect of entrepreneurship is actually very critical in Zambia. We have another study that we are conducting in line with entrepreneurship and employability, because I think most government policy documents that is being emphasized. Even as new programs are crafted, they are emphasizing that aspects of entrepreneurship should be integrated. And I think that speaks to also the changing definition of employability. Instead of just having the capacity to get a job, but you should also be able to create your own opportunities and employ yourself and become your own boss instead of looking for employment everywhere. But I think even when we talk about self-employment, many people believe in just getting a job after leaving university. And so the issue of entrepreneurship is being emphasized, that graduates, when they finish their program, they can, actually in Zambia, there are now cooperatives that are coming up, like a startup, depending on the skills that you have. You can form a cooperative. There are also avenues for accessing capital so that you can start doing whatever you want. And there's now in Zambia what we call a constituency development fund. And under that, there are resources that are made available to empower the youths, come up with groups and focus on one aspect of business that they would want to get into. But also sometimes accessing these capital resources that may be required to empower these groups to run also has something to do with social capital, as it were. So it also becomes problematic for some of these groups to be able to succeed. But also we are asking ourselves, do they have all the skills that they need in order to start the program? Because the research is out there that most of these entrepreneurial startups, they do fail after a short period of time. So how do we also ensure that these are sustainable? Probably that is another question worth interrogating. In terms of phasing out programs that are not demanded by the labor market, I think universities everywhere, they review their programs, maybe space of 4 years, 3 years, and 5 years. Also just being able to check whether what is being offered is in tandem with what the industry wants. A program designed today may not essentially be important in the near coming future because of the changes in the economy. And like in Zambia, there's emphasis to say whatever programs we design, they should be speaking to what we want to achieve as a country in the Vision 2030. And so such programs, like you were saying, may be playing a supportive role where courses, part of the filler courses in other programs, or you shelve it a bit. If demand comes, then you go and pick it up, clean it up, and then offer it in another way. And so that is very important. And as I end on this one, Professor Mika referred to the use of artificial intelligence. It is also growing, coming up. Students are embracing that. So as we are talking about skills development, and I think it has come to stay. So the question is how the higher learning institutions are also responding. Probably that is also an important area that is worth consideration, and I think that area will define most of the conversations that we will be having in the higher education space going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. It's 1:01. Please do ask Vanilla. We can take another 5 minutes for those in the room. Those online are free to leave. I think you raised your hand, so it's good to acknowledge. To ask.
Thanks for a very interesting study. I wondered whether your study had looked at, taken into consideration any nuances between the skills and the particular programs, because you produced sort of these generic skills that are required, and the implication is that they're required by all 30 programs that you looked at. So I wondered if there was any specific skills related to particular programs that could be used by institutions going forward. And then I also wondered about what your study says with regard to the implications for the education program. The fact that most jobs are in the education sector, and what that means with regard to how they're preparing graduates, and whether that also has implications for a sort of rush of new enrollments into education of people who actually don't want to even be educators, and the ripple of that eventually down the line.
Okay, thank you so much. As I respond to this particular question, I think I'm given an opportunity to say that this particular study may have its own limitations. And one of the limitations is that maybe not all the jobs that are available in different labor industries may have been represented in this particular study. And so even where it says most of the jobs that were available were in the education space, you know, the labor market has got always moving targets. It's not static. So basically what that implies is that come next year, there will be different job opportunities that will be available. It could just be that at this particular point when we are collecting this data between January and now, those sources where we got that particular information, the available job adverts were more coming from the education sector. And that has got methodological implications in terms of how the research work was done. In terms of which skills are peculiar to a particular labor sector, I think I shared a particular document where I was talking about cross-tabulating which of those skills were very critical to this particular area. And I think as we do the paper for this particular research, we'll be able to make that come out as clear as possible going forward. In terms of I think you were talking about implications for the education program, which I think I've answered that one by trying to highlight some of the limitations of this particular program. But of course, saying that despite these limitations that may be embedded in this particular study that was done, this particular study highlights some of the key aspects that we may need to consider as we design our programs in the higher education sector in terms of content, in terms of the teaching methodology, as well as how we assess our students. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think the nice thing is that almost everyone in this room is going to be there tonight for the dinner, so the conversations and the follow-on questions can take place that time. But I would like to take this opportunity to thank Dr. Thank you. So we've got another presentation by Professor Mantalu from UNIMA at 2 o'clock. But right now we are breaking for lunch, and we'll be back in the room at around 10 to 2 to start with the presentations. Those online, please do join us at 2 o'clock South African time. But thank you so much for joining.